Have you ever noticed that no matter where you go in the world in the month of Muharram, you'll find Shia Muslims mourning the tragedy of Imam Hussein, but depending on the language that they're speaking, the story might sound a little different. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how each language emphasizes a different dimension of Karbala. Because when you look at South Asia and places like Pakistan and India, there might be a noha that's being recited that leaves the whole room in tears. In Iraq, you might hear a latmiya that sounds like a call to action. And in Iran, you might hear poetry that sounds less like mourning and more like a declaration of honor. And that got me thinking, how can one single event, the tragedy of Karbala, be interpreted with so many different emotions and lenses? Common observation is that, for example, Arabic poetry might ask, will you fight with Hussein? Persian poetry would ask, will you uphold Hussein's honor? And Urdu poetry might ask, will you bear Hussein's loss? In South Asia, Karbala becomes a story about loss. If you listen carefully to Urdu nohas and marsiyas, you'll notice reoccurring themes. Their poetry dwells on conversations, farewells, final embraces, and moments of heartbreak. And a part of this comes from the literary culture that produced Urdu itself. Urdu poetry developed in the courts of North India, where themes of longing, separation, heartbreak, and remembrance were already central to the language. The same emotional world that produced the ghazal also produced the marsiya. The Urdu ghazal is basically an art form built around yearning. In a sense, Urdu didn't make Karbala sad, rather, Urdu found in Karbala the ultimate story of separation. Every civilization that encounters it sees something different reflected back based on their own unique circumstances and sociopolitics. So now let's travel west to Iraq with a completely different set of socio-political history and circumstances and language. Arabic mourning traditions definitely contain grief, but many contemporary Arabic latmiyas emphasize something different: loyalty, resistance, sacrifice, and readiness to answer Imam Hussein's call. This emphasis didn't emerge in a vacuum. For centuries, Shia communities in Iraq experienced political marginalization, state repression, and periods where public mourning itself became an act of resistance. As a result, many Arabic recitations don't simply mourn Karbala, they mobilize people through the message of Karbala. Then there's the Persian tradition, and Persian poetry often occupies a fascinating middle ground. The grief is there, but it's accompanied by a profound sense of dignity, honor, and moral victory. Scholars of Iranian Muharram tradition have often noted how Persian retellings of Imam Hussein paint him as not only a martyr, but the ultimate embodiment of freedom, courage, and honor. In Persian poetry, Karbala is not merely a story of defeat, but it's also a story of moral triumph. A lot of Persian mourning traditions and poetry is heavily shaped by classical Persian literature and the legacy of Persian epic tradition, like, for example, the influence of the Shahnameh. Persian poetry often paints Imam Hussein as this epic, king-like hero.